When Gran Turismo released in 1997 on the original PlayStation, it changed the entire concept of what racing games could be. Gran Turismo 2 in 1999 blew the doors off, and by the early 2000s, the franchise was known as the definitive racing game on the market. With Xbox arriving onto the scene in 2001, the team at Xbox knew they needed their own exclusive racer on the platform. Enter Forza Motorsport. The original Forza Motorsport released in 2005, and the team at Xbox wasn't shy about their goals, with Xbox director Kiki Wolfkill stating, "We are targeting Gran Turismo with this game on Xbox, and I think we've been very focused on that." Since that time, nearly 20 years ago, Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport have led the market in what I'll refer to as the sim-light racing genre. With the new Forza Motorsport, Turn 10 has gone back to the drawing board and created a brand new foundation for the future of their racer. With a feature and tech sheet that reads like a racing fan's dream game, does it take the checkered flag? Well, strap in, because we're going for a long ride. Upon loading into Forza Motorsport, you're greeted with a familiar, serene homepage which the series is known for. The main menu is an ever-rotating garage bay initially accompanied by the cover car, the 2023 Cadillac Racing V-Series R. However, you can immediately place any 4 cars you like to occupy your home screen, complete with any modifications you've made to them. 1 car sits in the main bay while the other 3 take the place in the background. It's a small but appreciated feature. Beginning your career means racing in the Builders Cup. It's the first series in the game and acts as an introduction to the new mechanics and options within a series. You'll choose from a Honda Civic, a Subaru STI, or a Ford Mustang to begin, and over the course of the series get a feel for the game, how the practice system functions, car leveling, the risk versus reward grid layout, and most importantly, the difficulty of your opponents. It's an excellent, not familiar, way to bring new players and veterans alike up to speed. Once you've blown the doors off of your competition, you gain access to the full Tours of Motorsport. These events focus on specific cars or themes, and are aimed at providing players the full breadth of motor racing experiences. It's not a drastic departure from what we've seen in various forms before. The series are each approached from a waterfall perspective in the sense that you have to complete them in a specific order, and at launch, there are 6 different tours, each containing 5 series, with the final race acting as a culmination showcase and rewarding you a special car. While I appreciate each series educating players on specific areas of car culture, and I also respect the approach of having players earn their way through the ranks, but I always find it a little bit of a drag when I'm forced to race with cars I personally don't enjoy. A few more options to provide flexibility in how to progress would have been welcomed. Outside of the Tours of Motorsport, I turned my attention to the featured multiplayer. Similar to the career mode, you must complete an introductory series in multiplayer before gaining the ability to race more broadly. In doing so, you'll earn your online safety and skill ratings, which factor into the matchmaking system for everything in online multiplayer from that point forward. Here you'll find rotating events in 2 flavors, Spec and Open. Spec events are series where every driver must use the same exact race model, which you can rent for free, thus placing the focus on personal driving skill. Open events, meanwhile, either highlight a car model or are class-based and feature a mixed field. Joining games is straightforward, and you are provided time for both practice laps and qualifying, which determines your grid placement just like a real race. While the offerings are a little light at the moment, I truly enjoyed my time in featured multiplayer. It's fun to jump in early, get several practice laps under your belt to warm up, and then sweat out the race with competition aimed at your level. If you'd rather just race with friends, private multiplayer options are extensive and include the full gamut of options. You can separate out player teams, create multi-class events, or even just create a meetup where everyone can drive around the track at will. Combined with the ability to save these configurations as files for future weekends, I see some amazing races on the horizon. Rivals events return as well, with new track and car combos and global and friend leaderboards intact. I admit I spent way too long chasing a ghost of Chris Sasaki around VIR in the review period. Regardless, it's great fun to see how many tenths of a second you can squeeze out of every lap. With all of that then, let's get to the crux of it, the racing itself. After all, it's why you're watching this video at the end of the day, so it makes me pleased to report that the racing itself in Forza Motorsport is some of the best I've ever had in gaming. It's the product of several new aspects working in conjunction to produce a sublime end product. Let's begin with the freshly rendered tracks. Real-world race locations certainly aren't new to games, but while the sights and curves may have been captured in great detail over the course of the last couple of decades, it rarely feels like you're actually racing there. It often feels static, as if you're racing through a picture on a page. Forza Motorsport track days feel like an event, with loads of lively onlookers, tents, flags, media coverage, and more occupying the surrounding area. Racing across the line and up through the hills on Spa is exhilarating, and it's accentuated beautifully by the surrounding track presence. It may sound almost superficial, but it adds a lot to the moment-to-moment experience. In combination with the fidelity at which the tracks have been recreated in this new rendition, it's a stunning achievement. This, of course, is further enhanced by new weather and time of day systems. Each impressed me more than I expected, if I'm being honest. Unlike a lot of racing games that begin with 3 or 4 options for time of day, Forza provides 10 as a starting point, each of which are then progressive after the start of the race. Beginning a race at Le Mans in the late afternoon and witnessing it evolve through sundown into evening is electrifying. In parallel, the weather system is perhaps the most impressive I've seen yet. Rather than merely having a couple varieties of clear and/or rain, there are 17 varieties of weather that can occur, and they evolve dynamically during a race. These include everything from light clouds to drizzle to heavy thunderstorms, lightning, fog, and more. And when combined with the varying times of day, they create drastically different race scenarios, often evolving during the race. And best yet, all of the combinations are available on every single track. It's quite simply spectacular. One of the complaints previously levied at Forza was in relation to lighting. While it was sometimes difficult to pinpoint, at times it just felt off, with cars frequently not seeming set in the environment properly. Like many of the systems in motorsport, this has been overhauled as well, which is essentially an imperative given the new time of day and weather systems. Not only do they work in unison to display stunning vistas at times, but cars generally look far more realistic on the track. There are a few exceptions here and there, but overall it's a massive improvement over what Turn 10 has done in the past. This translates extremely well to the 20 tracks included at launch regardless of the time of day. Sunlight peeks through trees, shadows are realistically cast across the race surface, sunsets create beautiful colors and menacing blind spots, reflections flicker across paint, and spotlights drill through the nighttime haze. And it all shifts realistically as the race matures and light sources move. Track selection will always be a hot and debatable topic with race fans. At launch, Motorsport features a mix of some well-known classics along some rarer entries, such as South Africa's Kyalami Grand Prix circuit. There's also a handful of fictional tracks, with the classic Maple Valley returning alongside new entries Hakone and Grand Oak, all of which I truly enjoy. Turn 10 plans to add a new track once a month, with Yas Marina already being announced for November. That said, the classic Nordschleife won't be present for several months, which is disappointing. While all of the above make for great racing environments, it wouldn't matter much if the racing itself was subpar. The team at Turn 10 hasn't been shy about the new systems they've built with regard to racing, claiming huge advancements in overall physics processing and new systems for several specific aspects, such as tire modeling. Fortunately, the work has paid off. Driving in Forza has never felt so rewarding, and if I'm being honest, it wasn't readily apparent immediately. After a few hours of getting acclimated and fine-tuning my settings, I began to put several cars through various tests, a few that I have extensive experience with in real life. In each case, the cars behaved generally as I would have expected, with dynamics that mimic their real-life behavior. But it wasn't until I experienced the full range of tuning and track conditions that I appreciated all of what's been built under the hood. Car tuning functions quite similar to past entries, with the menus even looking and feeling familiar, but with a few additions. However, tuning is much more intuitive in Forza Motorsport. You can truly feel the changes you make immediately upon setting out, even if they are in minor increments. And perhaps most importantly, the differences in car behavior and how each responds on the track are more noticeable and communicative. It feels as though tuning in prior iterations was broadcast in 2-channel stereo, while now is in full Dolby Atmos. Layering into this racing feel, of course, are tire wear, fuel weight, the weather and time of day systems, and the representation of the tracks. Each aspect works together in Forza Motorsport to present a racing cocktail that has few, if any, peers. And all of that is before we get to the new AI competition and penalty system. While the infamous Drivatar feature is still here in name, it too is new. AI drivers are now driven by machine learning, and according to the team at Turn 10, make for far more realistic races. From my time behind the wheel and playing with varying difficulties and settings, it seems like this is true with a few caveats. With the 24-car grid and difficulty set to push your limits, I experienced racing with the CPU at a level I'm not sure I've experienced before in a game. It's true, all-out, sweaty palm tension for laps on end. And it also allows for CPU drivers to make mistakes. Sometimes they'll overshoot corners, take poor lines, or wipe out entirely, but it's not so often that it feels unrealistic. These aspects are all calculated in real time, nothing is scripted, and combined to create a sense of realism that is the dream for any racing game. However, I also witnessed some strange things occasionally. Cars would sometimes break unexpectedly for no reason, and with so many cars on the track, there are situations where all hell can break loose, which honestly is quite funny at times. I also noticed some of the classic trappings where the back of the pack would fall off, while a handful of cars were the true competition at the front. But with machine learning, Turn 10 has stated that this will continue to evolve over time. And, to be fair, even with some oddities, I was very, very impressed with the CPU competition. The last factor in making racing truly competitive is an accurate penalty system. Also using machine learning, the new penalty system uses a range of calculations and studies a period of time to determine what occurred. It's a far more advanced system than other games that simply dole out penalties in the form of, your car hit this car, therefore here's a penalty, without any context given to what actually occurred on the track. It's a little forgiving in its current state, but I've been thoroughly impressed otherwise. And at the end of the day, it makes for more realistic racing, particularly in multiplayer. A couple of the core themes from the team at Turn 10 with this new entry are the ideas of built, not bought, and finding a new favorite car. They want players to worry less about collecting a wealth of cars and instead about falling in love with a few. With over 500 cars at launch, it shouldn't be too difficult to do so. Not only are many of the returning favorites here, but there are some fabulous new additions as well, right up through current modern releases. And unlike another game I won't mention, notable classics are actually attainable at any time and for a reasonable price. As you would expect, car detail has improved noticeably as well. Combining the new lighting system with the addition of ray-traced reflections, paint shimmers with a definition that will have you rushing to photo mode regularly. Numerous small details are present as well, such as the Amira 1 badge being present on the Lotus Amira, just like the limited first editions in real life. There are still some issues though, where things don't look as realistic as they should. Feels as though some leftovers or prior entries are present here, and the lighting system can also behave strangely at times. One moment, a car will look like a picture on a page, and the next it will look like a plastic toy. It's odd, and from what I can tell, simply has to do with how the lighting is reflected in certain environments. But fortunately, no such issues are present with the sound design. Being a car lover means appreciating a wide range of mechanical noises. And, of course, over the decades there have been power plant sounds that make us enthusiasts weak in the knees. I could listen to a Carrera GT or LFA run laps as the soundtrack to my day every day of the year. It's also an area in which Forza needed to improve as a franchise. It has, impressively so. Engines and exhaust noises are far more accurate to their real-life counterparts than they've ever been, with small details that are simply remarkable. From wastegates expelling air to turbos sucking it in, superchargers whining, straight-cut gears, and all the lovely varieties of engine types, they are incredibly well represented. And most importantly, they are well defined on a crowded track as well. Blaring down a long straight with a C63 roaring in front of me and an 812 screaming next to me will never get old. And the clarity put forth in full 3D sound is exquisite. What I expect will be the most controversial new approach in motorsport is car leveling. As you drive, you earn points for how you race, and you level up your car from 1 through 50. Leveling unlocks car points, which you can then use to buy modifications for that specific car. This means that to modify and tune a car how you like, you must level it enough to unlock that capability. One of the traditions for me in Forza is to immediately buy an E36 M3 and 944 Turbo. I then modify them to almost exact replicas of cars I've owned in real life, and I take them for a cruise around some of my favorite tracks. That, quite literally, cannot be done now. I would have to spend at least a few hours with each before I could modify them to mimic their counterparts. While I understand the desire to have players fall in love with cars and learn how upgrades change them over time, it feels far too restrictive for veterans of racing, or even just the series in general. The ideas behind scoring your segments as you race and constantly challenging your best times through key corners of a track, though, are well implemented. And I could even see an argument for upgrading cars with car points while saving currency for purchasing cars outright. But locking time and points to each model independently is a poor choice that I hope is changed in the future. So then, you may be wondering, how's the rest of the game? Well, this is where my review takes a pit stop, because there is no rest of the game. What I've detailed so far is the new Forza Motorsport from top to bottom. You might be thinking about the fact that I haven't talked about career progression, player details and/or customization, stat tracking, player and friend records, accomplishments, or anything that goes along with your persona in this digital racing world. And you would be correct in noticing, because none of those things exist in the game today. Once you get past buying cars, tuning them, and racing, Forza Motorsport has nothing left to offer at launch. Now naturally, I recognize the irony in saying this racing game only features excellent racing. But there comes a moment while looking through the menus that you realize just how bare bones it is. Also keep in mind that when I say racing, I'm referring to circuit racing. There are no off-road, drift, or drag races present at launch either. When Turn 10 said this was a new foundation for the future of Forza Motorsport, they weren't lying. I simply expected it to be further down the road. While I'm not clamoring for extensive distractions or meaningless modes that have no bearing on racing or the love of cars, I'm honestly not sure how the game is launching without something like a player profile page. At the bare minimum, you should be able to reflect on in-game accomplishments, your best times at specific tracks, favorite cars, miles driven, and multiplayer statistics. Some sort of tracking of your race career and journey within the game needs to be present. But outside of a general player level, which is nothing more than a number, and your online ratings, there's nothing else represented. It's honestly almost strange. Given this being Turn 10's platform for the future, I expect this to evolve and improve over time. The roadmap for weekly events alongside track and car editions looks solid, but I sincerely hope it won't be long before some depth is added in the player and career aspects to flesh out the overall experience. Forza Motorsport is an enigma. On one hand, it's a successful reboot of a nearly 20-year-old franchise that accomplishes the vast majority of what it set out to do. It provides a racing experience that in many ways is unmatched, and I foresee myself losing hundreds of hours toying with cars and racing online. On the other hand, some strange decisions and missing features that by all accounts would be considered basic functionality in 2023 result in the experience ringing a little hollow at times. I'm extremely excited for the future of Forza Motorsport. The direction to take a step back, rebuild core systems from the ground up, and move forward with a strong new foundation was the correct one. And because of that, the variety and quality of racing experience it presents are fabulous. With ever-evolving events, monthly car and track editions, and long-term growth plans, it could very well evolve into the definitive racing game on the market. I just hope we don't have to wait long for the overall career aspects to be expanded upon and some minor issues to be touched up. Now, it's time for me to suit back up. I've got a few ghosts to chase down. I'll see you on the track.